Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. And welcome to our webinar this, Wednesday morning, where we are, at least going to review the Nordic SaaS market with Niklas here from Monterro. It will be super excited to hear more about, your, I would say, results from your report that we are going to review this morning. And I mean, a short presentation of who we are. I will just briefly introduce myself. My name is Robin Kurtén. I work as a growth ambassador at Staria. And one thing that I would like to highlight is that, why we are also at Staria very eager to review the SaaS market is that I would say a lot of our customers and customer base is SaaS companies. And that's, of course, super interested for us as well to get some insights and I would say a better understanding of how the SaaS companies out there, what they think about and what they need to prioritize in their sort of, I would say, challenging markets So it will be super nice to hear, Monterro's findings on this. And enough about me. And again, much welcome here to our office in Stockholm, Niklas. We happen to be neighbors as well. Your office is just around the corner. But I mean, warmly welcome. And please, Niklas, tell us a bit about yourself. Who are you?
Yes, thanks, Robin. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. So I'm Niklas Carling, working in our operations team currently at Monterro, which means that I work more closely with our companies in our portfolio, and we'll go in a little bit about Monterro in a second. But before that, me personally, from Finland originally, but now based here in Stockholm, but also used to work a couple of years on the American market in New York. And a little bit about kind of Monterro and what we do for those of you who are new to us. So we are a software investor, and we would say that we are the leading B2B software investor in the Nordics. So we focus exclusively on SaaS, or mostly SaaS, but there are of course some companies also still that do on-prem or other types of software models, but only kind of B2B. So we have 20 companies today in our portfolio across the Nordics, all of them working towards kind of in B2B segments, but in different parts of the industry. We are very operational, so which also comes back to kind of my role as being working very closely with our portfolio companies. So we are involved helping, coaching, and kind of helping to build and scale the software companies in our portfolio. And I would say typically kind of most of the companies in our portfolio are between 5 and 30 million euros in revenues. So in that phase, when you found your ICP, you found kind of a product market fit, but you are looking to scale up, go to new markets, go to new segments, and build a large organization and processes. So those are kind of typical challenges and opportunities that we see in our companies. And I think lastly about kind of Monterro, we also like to say that we are the ones with skin in the game. So 25% of the capital we invest comes from ourselves, which means that we also have a little bit more kind of balanced view on how to find growth and profitability.
Okay, cool. And also, is there some, or is it hard to say? But I guess, I mean, it's Swedish companies, it's Finnish companies, Norwegian, Danish. It's a good mix of everything, I would say.
It's a good mix. So you see the logos there on the bottom of the screen. Of course, they're all kind of B2B. So depending on which niche you work in, they might not be familiar. But they're based in Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland. But a lot of them do have operations across Europe, and some of them also globally, or truly global companies, but headquartered in the Nordics.
Okay, cool. All right. Let's still, I mean, take a look at the agenda and what we have sort of promised at least the listeners that we will discuss about today is, of course, taking a look at the market trends in the SaaS B2B business. And well, there we will have it will be really interesting to dig a bit deeper into the benchmark report you released just a couple of weeks ago or so. And also, I mean, what is the climate out there at this point? We know it's challenging times, and yeah, what do companies need to think about when they think about raising some more funding? And of course, also maybe a bit, you already touched based it a bit, but also your approach at Monterro. I mean, how you invest, what you look at, how you develop the software companies, and also the cooperation between you. As you said, you have both skin in the game, and you are also, I mean, in an operational level, committed to it as well. So yeah. But yeah, I mean, let's dig in.
Let's dive in.
Yeah.
So first of all, a little bit of a kind of background to the report that we are doing, which will be kind of the basis of a lot of the discussions here today. And then, of course, I'll bring in some of the more qualitative views or experiences that we have from working both with our existing companies, but also meeting with a quite big number of software companies across the Nordic. So we'll kind of try to bring those two in together. What we won't be looking into detail today is kind of funding, or, fundraising data, or exit data, etc. I think there's a lot of other good reports on those topics. But the benchmark report, it's an annual report that we've been doing for the third year in a row, which means that we are starting to get good data on kind of where not only kind of what's a good benchmark today, but how have they moved over the years, what are the key challenges, what's the mentality of the B2B software landscape, and how is that changing over year. So you'll get a link, I think, after this webinar to the full report, so you can download that with more data. But this year's report based on 300 B2B software companies from all the Nordic countries, typically C-suite or kind of founders that have replied on the survey. And today we focus more on the kind of the trends and what we see, but in the full report you'll also get a lot of data on benchmarks for what is a good net promoter score, or what is a good churn, or employee churn, etc. So there's a lot more into the report than where we have time in today's 30 minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes. but of course, I mean, before we also dig into the insights, so I mean, we want to engage you as well during the webinar. So please use the chat box and ask questions. I mean, we will do our best to answer them. I will do my best also to administrate, to see your questions. But please feel free to just shoot some questions also during the webinar, not only in the end. So if something comes, please use the chat box so we can at least try to take them on the fly as well.
Yeah. So we are going to go through kind of 5 key findings from the report on the trends. And the number one, which I think is very positive, is that the growth rates remained very strong in 2023. So around 33-34% on average for the companies that replied in our survey. And I think this is especially strong when you put it into more of a global context, and you look at some of the benchmark reports from the US, for example, where you could see growth almost going down half from kind of 40% to 20%. So quite kind of positive in terms of the Nordic state. But what we can also see is that the sentiment is a little bit more cautious going into 2024. So we kind of calculated a sentiment, and it just included here a quick slide on how we calculate it, so we kind of easier to follow. But we look at, okay, what share of companies believe that their growth rate is accelerating in 2024 versus 2023, and then we deduct the share that are believing in a deaccelerating growth rate, and that's how we get to this net sentiment number. And then if we look at that over the years, we saw quite kind of positive trend in 2023 or going into 2023. I think it's a little bit maybe surprising given kind of the geopolitical landscape, but I think what you did have there, a lot of companies did have price increases in the plans, and kind of sales were still going relatively smooth. So you kind of saw more positive at the growth rate. In 2024, we see that the number has declined quite a bit. It's still almost half the companies believing in an accelerating growth rate. So it's good. There's a lot of positivity there, but there's also a quarter of the companies that are believing in a deaccelerating growth rate, and that's the highest number since we started this survey.
Yeah, and also, I mean, of course, I mean, if we also compare the numbers from 2022 to 2024, is of course, I mean, the deaccelerating percentage is higher, yes, but also the accelerating percentage there is quite some change in that as well. I mean, 29% versus 50% 2024. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I like to be positive.
Definitely, and I think there's a lot to be positive about. I think what we might be seeing a little bit now is a couple of years back, kind of in the backwaters of COVID, anything software was growing and with kind of good or easy to sell, but like now we see that customers are a little bit more critical in terms of what they want to buy. So I think kind of if you're building a good company and you're solving a real problem and you have a strong technology, there's no reason for you to not go after growth. But if you haven't really found your ICP, or you're kind of struggling there, or something with a kind of nice to have solution that really wasn't needed, it might be a little bit more difficult.
So yeah, but growth is still the number one key metric, so to say.
Yes. And it's quite interesting also to see kind of differences here on countries. I think I can say this since I'm from Finland, but we aren't really known for being the most positive people. But actually in this survey we see that the net sentiment number is the highest in Finland, so 60. So showing a lot of optimism from Finland.
Yeah, absolutely. Could almost say hyvä Suomi there. Like that.
All right, but let's move on to kind of some of the challenges. So if we look at sales execution, or every year we ask like, what is your top 3 challenge? Sales execution has always been a key challenge. So you see there 44% in 2021, but it's now up to 72%. So almost 3/4 of companies saying that this is the problem.
Really a top worry,
and we see that kind of across all countries, all types of companies. Maybe there's a little bit of a trend when you look at the size of companies. So the smallest companies have less of a problem with this, because you have a founder that is kind of knows the product in and out and can really get kind of inspired and can get customers to also get inspired and see the value. But then as you're growing to that kind of 5 to 20 million range, that's when it becomes harder, when you need to scale, you need to hire a CSO, you need to scale up with new salespeople, you need to get a repeatable sales process, and then larger companies than that, we see kind of a lower percentage again. And I think that's kind of where, if you don't solve these issues, you don't. It's much more difficult to grow to that size also.
Yeah. What are are there some other things with why I would say this is also interesting for me as also working within sales. Of course, I can also see myself in of course, sales execution is a top worry, and then there's where at least I put most of my focus. But what are the sort of the biggest reason? You mentioned some of them, but it's obviously, we talked also about earlier that the decision-making process is maybe longer. There are more people that are also involved in that that process.
Yeah, so definitely longer sales processes, more stakeholders involved. I think, and of course, at the macro level, we see that software, like enterprise software, is definitely a growth market, and it's going to continue to grow for a long period of time. But customers are also realizing that they're spending a lot of money on software, and maybe a little bit more cautious in terms of signing contracts, long contracts of quite big ticket items.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Another trend that has been kind of continue to go on is the focus on your existing customers. So when it gets a little bit more difficult to sell to new customers, then you tend to kind of look at, okay, what do I have in the existing customer base? Can we work with them to grow, either by kind of expanding functionality, expanding to new geographies together with the customer, or new departments, new users, and of course price increases as a key lever there. So if you see here on the slide all the way to the left, we ask about like what are your big growth topics, top 3 growth topics for the next year, so for 2024. Upselling to existing customer base is kind of the clear number 1, has been so since last few years, but kind of increasing. I wouldn't say that the increase here is as dramatic as we saw on the sales execution side, but kind of definitely still going on.
Is this because of some you see the low-hanging fruits out there, or is it just maybe concentrating more of your current customer base as well, and it's been maybe historically more about the growth and also onboarding new customers and then just go on to the next one? I don't know, maybe that would be have been the approach.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think like in the last few years, it's been an increasing trend on customer success in many ways. I think like if you look at different events or speakers or topics, like customer success has been, especially over the last 2-3 years, super hot topic.
Yeah.
I think where we kind of maybe see a little bit of a lag there is in the execution part. So it's easy to think that, okay, let's solve upselling by establishing a customer success organization, but if it's not really part of your whole sales cycle or your sales process, and if you don't kind of look at it from a more holistic way, I think it's difficult to extract the value. So one kind of interesting correlation that we saw in the benchmark report, I mean, look at deeper in the data, is actually that companies with more customer success employees tend to have lower net revenue retention figures.
Okay.
Maybe it's hard to say exactly what the causality is there, but there's definitely a correlation there. So yeah. I think just volume of people is not the solution.
Not the solution. No, exactly.
And looking at some of the kind of, again, differences in countries, so here we see a little bit more differences.
Yeah.
When you look at the growth channels. So Sweden being a little bit more maybe defensive, maybe it's also like a larger market, so you have more customers to begin with, but it's a higher percentage there that are focusing on upselling, whereas Danish companies are kind of the most aggressive on international expansion. I think that's also something that we see in our portfolio in the Danish companies. You're quite quick to go to new markets and go kind of south to Europe and the larger markets.
Yeah,
a little bit more.
Germany is just around the corner in a way.
Yeah, well, it seems to take a little bit longer time, especially kind of when we're meeting companies in Norway and Finland.
Yeah. Cool.
Good. And we spoke a little bit around kind of the net revenue retention, NRR, being a key topic for upselling. Here we do see some challenges in the numbers. So you see here that it's gone down from 110 to 106 in last year in the NRR. So definitely we see more customers that are looking at their spend and seeing, do we really need this functionality? Do we really need all these users? And can we optimize spend, especially maybe kind of in the wake of larger price increases?
Yeah. Interesting. Then about recruiting talents.
Yeah. So looking at challenges, but from a positive point of view. Talent, when we started the survey in 21, was a key challenge, one or two together with sales execution. But here we see a very clear kind of decline, which is positive. So less companies are seeing this as a challenge. I think also here you see it in profitable, unprofitable companies, in startups, in larger companies, in all countries, it's decreasing. And I think here kind of there's both a supply and demand factor here. So a lot of kind of growth plans, especially if you were VC funded, have been cut or decreased, meaning that you also need less employees. But one thing that we also look at a lot in our portfolio companies is to see how can we grow without adding FTEs at the same rate as we used to before. So can we be more efficient in development, sales, marketing across any department really, and that's also something that we see in the survey, that the revenue per FTE has gone up significantly in 2023 compared to 2022.
Can you see some correlation to, I mean, 2021 wasn't that, I mean, we still had the pandemic as well, so that was maybe one of the reasons to it, or?
Yeah, I think in 2021, like of course you had the 2020 dip, but then software recovered very quickly, and software was in ways the solution also to handle remote working and other challenges that came with COVID. And you saw kind of big boom from all the stimulus. So definitely the labor market was much tougher across the board in 2021, but especially I would say in tech. And I think now what you're also seeing, of course, is larger layoffs from big companies, including kind of B2C companies like Klarna and Spotify, etc. And that also kind of creates a new pool of talent for B2B companies that maybe wasn't available before.
Exactly. Interesting. I mean, it has really decreased from only from last 2022 levels.
Very. But I think here it's very positive. Of course, it means it's easier to find talent and find growth. But it also means that you probably have a larger number of candidates for each position. So finding the right one could be even more difficult than before.
Okay.
Then lastly, AI, I think has been on everyone's mind.
Exactly. This is actually something that this is really interesting also for us at Staria, because this was actually something that we will dig deeper in, just in a second, but something that we actually implemented at Staria. So we have our own AI, Staria Mind, which is for me and my colleagues, or for the employees, basically, just to maybe make that, as you mentioned, the revenue per FTE being a bit higher and more efficient.
No, so this year, it's the first year we included a question on generative AI. It's been around now for kind of the big ChatGPT hype for a bit more than a year and a half.
November 22, I think, late November.
So it's definitely been it's been a big hype. It's been something we've been talking about with all our companies. But I think what we're now starting to see, both kind of when we are asking here in the survey, but also in our portfolio companies, that we are seeing more actual solutions being implemented and being delivered to clients. So here kind of what you see on the graph in the green colors are companies that are implementing or already have integrated Gen AI into their core business operations. Of course, on the startup side, you see a higher percentage of companies.
I think it's really interesting to see. I mean, the mix of it, that the startups, the smallest and also the larger ones, they have already started out with it. And of course, I mean, the 20% that already integrated some AI in the business is really interesting to see.
Yeah, and I think most companies today, and that's what you see more kind of qualitatively, but different conferences like Slash, etc., like probably 90% of startups today are thinking about AI when they are setting up the company. So it's completely different from before. But you also see, as you mentioned, the larger companies there are further ahead in terms of implementing AI. So somewhere in the middle, there are kind of smaller companies that don't really have the resources to invest. but they still have, and they also have a legacy product already in place.
Yeah.
They are a little bit maybe behind, but of course it's not, if you look at the numbers here, it's not a big difference in terms of who's coming up with AI. But I think when looking at the companies, it's quite interesting to see now kind of actually finding usage solutions that are live in terms of like customer support or how to answer kind of RFPs, etc. So a lot of internal processes that are being done more efficiently, but you're also seeing a lot more functionality in that software that's going out to customers. So finding information more easily or being able to read through data in a new way. So that's kind of really coming out in quite interesting ways now.
Definitely. I can only relate to personal experience. Like I mentioned, the Staria Mind is something that I have to admit that I use it on a daily basis, many times per day as well. And we are learning it as well, so it will only get better and better the more we use it as well. So yeah, it will be a good tool.
Yes.
All right.
So that's a lot about kind of more operational. We have a couple of minutes, I guess.
Couple of minutes left. Yeah.
For looking more at the fundraising, which is not kind of been the focus of the report, but we do ask kind of is financing a top challenge for companies? And while we see that number has gone up a little bit, I think from 13% to 16%, it's still very low given the kind of the overall market sentiment around that everything is crashing and valuations, investments, etc. are going down by 50% or more to COVID highs. We see that most companies are still finding ways to secure financing, and it's not kind of a top challenge. But of course, what you see here is unprofitable high growth companies that used to kind of live on that VC model. They are struggling with that financing, and what we see also in the market, speaking to a lot of companies there, is that you have to cut back on your growth plans and cut back on your expenditures, or kind of find new alternative ways for financing.
Exactly. And I guess this is a bit going back to the beginning as well, that growth is still being the key metric, but profitability is coming there, and maybe that's also super important to keep in mind, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's definitely coming, and that kind of goes back a little bit to how we look at it at Monterro, or how we look at that valuations financing from a Monterro perspective. Is that we like to see ourselves as company builders. If you build a good company, if you build a good product, you have customers that find value from your solutions and like your solutions, you have a clear kind of right to win against your competitors, or clear positioning, and you build a good organization, both the management team but all the way down, and have a good culture. So you build a good company. Then there will be an exit opportunity, and then financing, and also financing along the way, will be much easier. But kind of focusing on that, building a good company, and less focus on the financing and exit. I think that's our view of it, and our tip to founders and management teams out there.
I have one question about how you cooperate with the portfolio companies, and I guess that you are probably involved in a part of course the portfolio. So on a sort of I don't know, weekly, monthly, daily basis, could you give an example of you are in contact with I guess the leadership or management team from the portfolio companies, and then obviously maybe board meetings or something like that?
So we, of course, as mentioned in the beginning, we're operational owner, which means that of course we do work through the board. We always have a chairman position and one or two kind of board positions. So definitely working very actively in the board, but also kind of in between the board meetings. So we don't kind of wait for the quarter to end and come in. But typically on kind of a weekly basis, being in touch with the management team, and being kind of I would say our style is more being kind of coaching, so being there and helping when there's a need. We don't kind of force down. We have certain templates and frameworks that we can help, but we don't kind of force them down the throat of management teams. It's important for us that kind of the management team is steering their own ship, and then we help where we can.
Assist wherever we can. Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. Oh, we are already 1 minute over. Time flies, but I mean, super much thanks to you, Niklas, for coming here and opening a bit up about it. And for those of the listeners, like you mentioned, I mean, if you are more interested in the benchmark report, we will add the link in the follow-up mail with the recordings as well. So please take a look at that. And yeah,
and feel free to reach out on LinkedIn if there's or email if there's any questions or anything you want to discuss.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, with that said, thank you to the listeners as well. And yeah, at least in Sweden, in Stockholm today, it's no snow out there. I don't know. I've seen some pictures from Finland, at least from yesterday. But yeah, have a great Wednesday, everyone, wherever you are located. And yeah, see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.